Welcome back to Books on the Mic. Fellow book lovers, we're on chapter 14 now. And if you're just joining us, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more chapters. Today we're taking a deep dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. You know this book. I mean, it's had a really huge impact on so many readers. It really gets you thinking about the power of purpose, even when things are unbelievably hard.
It really speaks to how strong the human spirit can be. It's amazing how Frankl went through something so dark, his time in the Nazi camps, and found these incredible lessons on meaning in life.
It's almost impossible to grasp, just how brutal those camps were. It wasn't just physical suffering. It was like a system designed to just take away people's humanity, to really understand what Frankel's saying. I think we need to try to imagine what his life was like every day.
Try to picture a world where everything you care about is gone. Your stuff, your sense of self, loved ones, even your name all gone. You're just a number. And the threat of death is always there. Frankl describes this awful thing called the finger game, where an SS officer could just decide your fate with a simple gesture, life or death in the gas chambers. Just like that.
It's bone-chilling. The level of dehumanization is just, it's mind-blowing.
Totally. And in the middle of all that horror, Frankl was observing, analyzing, trying to understand how people responded to such unimaginable suffering. And he noticed, these distinct phases of psychological reaction, these stages that the prisoners went through.
So, how did people even start to deal with an existence like that? What did Frankl see in those early days?
Well, the first thing is shock, disbelief. It's like the mind just can't process what's happening. But then as that reality sinks in, you see this chilling apathy take over.
Yeah. He talks about that story of a prisoner who wouldn't even look out the train window at his hometown, even though they were passing right by it.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of that apathy. It wasn't sadness, It was this total emotional detachment, almost like a defense mechanism, a way to numb the pain of loss and fear.
So with all this despair around them,
hmm
how did anyone find the will to keep going? Was it just basic survival instincts?
This is where it gets really interesting. Frankl says that the main drive for humans isn't pleasure, like Freud said. He calls it the will to meaning. He saw that even in those horrible conditions, the people who clung to some sense of purpose, some why to live, they were the ones who were more likely to endure, to survive.
So it wasn't just about getting through the current moment. It was about having something to hope for, something to work toward.
Exactly. It's about having that reason to get out of bed in the morning, even when that morning might bring you unimaginable suffering.
It's like that story he tells about, finding comfort in imagining himself giving a lecture on the psychology of the camps, that future goal, that image in his mind. It became his lifeline.
It wasn't just some daydream. It showed the power of finding meaning, even in the darkest place imaginable. And he wasn't the only one. He saw it in other prisoners, too. Those who focused on being reunited with loved ones, on finishing some work, or even just holding on to their values. They had a stronger will to live.
It's just incredible to think that even in those depths of despair, there were moments of humor, as fleeting as they may have been.
Oh, absolutely. Frankl tells the story about a surgeon who, even after being liberated, he couldn't shake this habit of asking for his soup from the bottom at a fancy dinner party. A leftover habit from the camps where the thickest soup settled at the bottom of the pot.
Such a poignant reminder that even in those really dark times, the human spirit finds ways to cope, to find the little bit of light.
Exactly. And this brings up another key point from Frankl. The idea that suffering is relative. Like the prisoners feeling joy when they arrived at a camp that didn't have a crematorium. It shows how even within that awful system, there were different levels of suffering. It makes you think.
It really does make you question your own perspective on hardship. What we might see as a big crisis, someone else in a different situation might see as a relief. But Frankl argues that even with all the horrors, the prisoners always held on to some degree of inner freedom. What did he mean by that?
That's a fascinating part. He's talking about the freedom to choose your attitude. Even in a concentration camp where every external freedom is taken away, you still have that power, the power to decide how you respond on the inside. No matter what's happening around you, you can choose how to maintain your dignity.
I'm thinking about the stories of prisoners who risked their own lives to help others, those acts of, just incredible moral courage.
Those acts, and they often came with huge personal risk. They really show the strength of the human spirit. They show this ability to rise above even the most oppressive environment, a powerful testament to the will that humans have. But, liberation itself,
Yeah.
It wasn't this simple, joyous experience for everyone, was it?
No, it wasn't. Frankl talks about the mental and emotional challenges people faced when they were released. The feeling of disorientation, the disillusionment. A lot of people experience that.
Think about it. After years of having your identity and independence taken away, you're suddenly thrown back into a world where you have choices again. Frankl called this depersonalization. The world feels unreal, almost like a dream.
He describes, prisoners walking past flower shops after being liberated, and they couldn't feel any joy. They couldn't even, recognize the beauty of the flowers.
Yeah, exactly. And there were outbursts too. Anger and frustration, like
Yeah.
that freed prisoner who, just lashed out at a woman for asking for directions.
A powerful reminder that the trauma lasts. And it emphasizes the need for understanding and compassion for those who've gone through such unimaginable things. But you know what strikes me? Is how relevant Frankl's observations are even now, so many decades later, in a world so different from the concentration camps.
Yeah. His work goes beyond just those camps. It offers insights into the whole human experience. It's about finding meaning in a world that can often feel chaotic and meaningless.
So how do we take these profound ideas and apply them to our own lives? Even though most of us haven't faced those same extreme circumstances, what does Frankl's work teach us about dealing with the challenges of modern life?
That's what's so great about Frankl's work. It's not just about surviving terrible things. It's like a guide to really living, to living
Yeah.
a life that's full of purpose, even when you're facing challenges.
So how do we actually put these ideas into practice in our everyday lives? Where do we even start?
Frankl talked about 3 ways we can find meaning. First, creative work. Think about contributing something to the world, something that's uniquely yours, making your mark even if it seems small.
So that could be anything. Writing a book or starting a company or even raising a family, volunteering, anything like that.
Exactly. It's about expressing yourself, making a difference, creating something that wouldn't exist without you. The second way is through experiencing something or connecting with someone. Think love, beauty, nature, those deep connections.
Those moments that make you feel truly alive, that take your breath away, like hearing an amazing piece of music or seeing a beautiful sunset or having a deep conversation with someone you care about.
You got it. Opening yourself up to those experiences, those moments of awe and wonder, that's another way to find meaning. But there's a third way, and it's probably the toughest one, finding meaning through suffering.
Now, this is where things get really interesting, right? We naturally try to avoid suffering, but Frankl is suggesting that it can actually be a source of meaning.
It's not about looking for pain, obviously, but it's about seeing that suffering is just a part of life. We can't escape it. And the real question is, how do we react to it? How do we find purpose, even when we're going through something hard?
It's like those prisoners we were talking about. They showed such strength, such resilience, despite everything they were facing. They chose to find meaning in their suffering.
Right. And that's where this idea of attitudinal values comes in. Frankl said that even when we can't control what's happening to us, we always have the power to choose our attitude, to decide how we're going to react.
It's that inner freedom again, isn't it? Even in the most horrible situations, we still have that spark of choice.
That's it. It's not about pretending the pain isn't there or that everything is okay. It's about finding a purpose that's bigger than the suffering, a reason to keep going, even when it feels like everything's lost.
So how do we actually do that? How do we build this will to meaning in our own lives?
Are there, exercises Frankl recommends? Techniques we can use?
There's one really powerful technique he calls de-reflection. It's basically shifting your focus outwards, away from your anxieties and problems and towards something bigger than yourself.
So instead of focusing on what we don't have or what's wrong, we focus on what we can give, what we can contribute. Exactly. Frankl noticed that people who focus on helping others, on being part of something bigger than themselves, they're less likely to fall into despair. It's about finding that sense of purpose that comes from knowing you're making a difference, no matter how small.
It makes you think about how powerful it is to volunteer, or to do something kind for someone, to just be there for someone who needs you.
Yeah. Another important thing is realizing that our situations are all unique. Frankl said there's no single answer to finding meaning. What gives one person purpose might be totally different for someone else.
It's about finding our own path, right? Our own personal why.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, what's life asking of me right now? What's my unique contribution? What gifts do I have to offer?
And that meaning can change, right?
Ah,
As we go through different stages in our lives.
of course. It's not about finding one big purpose and then clinging to it forever. It's about being open to how life changes and finding meaning in every new experience, every new challenge.
So even when things are hard, we can still find those reasons to get up in the morning, those moments of joy and purpose.
You got it. It's not about waiting for meaning to just show up. It's about actively searching for it, creating it, even in the little things.
Like those prisoners who found comfort in a joke, a sunset, a moment of connection.
Exactly. It's about being grateful for what we have, Noticing those bits of beauty and meaning, even when things seem dark. But let's be real, finding meaning in suffering is a lot easier said than done. What about those really tough times when it feels like everything is falling apart? How do we deal with the pain and loss?
Yeah, that's a question I think a lot of us struggle with. When we're in the middle of something painful, it can be so hard to see anything but the darkness.
Frankl said something really profound. Suffering stops being suffering the moment it finds a meaning.
So it's not about erasing the pain or pretending it never happened, but about using it for something, making it purposeful.
Yeah, you got it. It's about asking ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? Can I use this pain to help other people?
It's about turning our wounds into wisdom, our struggles into strength.
Exactly. Frankl believed that even the most tragic things have some hidden meaning, a chance for growth and transformation, even if we can't see it right away.
It reminds us that even when life seems totally meaningless, there's always a chance to find meaning, to turn our pain into purpose. But it's a process, right? It doesn't happen instantly.
It's a journey, not a destination. There will be times when we feel lost, when we question everything. But those moments of doubt are when we need to remember how strong we are, how capable we are of finding meaning, even in the darkest places.
It's about believing that even when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's still there, just waiting for us to find it.
Frankl's work gives us a map, a map for getting through those dark times, for finding our way back to meaning, to purpose, to a life that's worth living.
That message feels so important today, When so many people are searching for meaning and connection, looking for something to believe in.
And it reminds us that we're not alone in this search. Frankl's experiences, as awful as they were, they offer hope. They show that the human spirit is incredibly strong, that we can find meaning even when facing the worst kind of suffering.
It's like he's saying that our ability to find meaning is what makes us human.
And even in the worst times, that part of us, that will to meaning, it can never be destroyed.
So how do we take these amazing insights and actually do something with them? How do we take Frankl's philosophy and, turn it into something real in our lives?
It starts with noticing those times when we feel lost or disconnected, when we feel like our lives don't have purpose.
So we don't push those feelings away, we acknowledge them, we explore them.
Exactly. Frankl believed that really facing our anxieties and fears, instead of trying to numb them or avoid them, that's the first step to finding meaning. It's about being, really honest with ourselves about what's missing, what we're longing for.
And then we do something about it.
Right.
Frankl wasn't into just sitting around thinking. He believed you find meaning by being active in life.
You got it. It's about
Yeah.
getting out there, trying new things, connecting with people, contributing to something bigger than yourself.
So trying new things, taking risks, figuring out what really matters to us, what gives us that sense of purpose, finding the things that, that make us feel alive, that make us excited to get up in the morning.
Exactly. And those things, they're going to be different for everyone,
Right.
Frankl was really clear that the meaning of life isn't something you just, find in some self-help book.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's personal. It's something we each have to figure out for ourselves.
It's not about following a set path. It's about making our own trail, finding our own way to meaning. But it's not always easy, is it? We're going to face challenges, setbacks, times where we feel lost. What did Frankl say about those tough times?
He said that even in those really dark moments, we've got this amazing ability to bounce back, to be resilient. We just have to find a way to tap into it.
So trusting our inner strength, that ability to find our way back to the light, even when we feel surrounded by darkness. I really love that.
It's a powerful idea. And remember, you don't have to go through it alone. Frankl believed in the power of community, of having people around us who support us on this journey.
It's about building connections, the relationships that, that feed our souls, that help us find our way.
Yes. And it's about giving back, too. Frankl thought that when we use our experiences, even our struggles, to help other people, that's how we find a deeper sense of meaning, of purpose.
There's that saying, that African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that. That's exactly what Frankl was talking about. We're not meant to do this alone. One thing that really hit me about his work is the focus on taking responsibility. Even in the worst situations, he believed we always have a choice in how we react.
There's that idea of inner freedom again. We might not be able to control what happens to us, but we can always control our inner world, our attitude, our response.
And that choice, that decision about how we're going to react, that's where meaning comes from. It's what makes us different. It's what lets us rise above even the hardest situations.
So finding meaning is almost like an act of defiance, like refusing to let our circumstances define us, refusing to let suffering crush our spirit.
Exactly. It's about realizing that even in the darkest times, there's a light inside us, a spark of hope that can't be put out.
And sometimes that spark is ignited by the most unexpected things. Frankl talks about finding a torn page from a Hebrew prayer book in the pocket of a dead man's coat.
That one page, it had the Shema Yisrael prayer on it. It became this powerful symbol for him, a reminder that even in the middle of death and despair, there's something to live for, something to believe in.
It's amazing how a small thing, something that seems insignificant, can become so meaningful. Frankl called this the Shema Yisrael moment.
And everyone's got one, It could be running into someone, seeing an amazing view, a sudden realization, anything that cuts through the darkness and shows you a bit of meaning, a reason to keep going.
Makes you wonder, what's your Shema Yisrael moment? What small detail in your life has a deep, almost like sacred meaning to you? It's something to think about, isn't it?
It really is. It reminds us to pay attention, to be open to the unexpected, to see that meaning can be found anywhere, and to never stop searching for it, even when it feels hopeless.
Because, like Frankl said, that will to meaning, it's a deep thirst. It pushes us forward, even when the path ahead looks impossible.
It's about believing, believing that even when things are really bad, there's always a reason to hope, to find meaning in the midst of it all.
Frankl's man's search for meaning gives us such deep insights into what it means to be human. And if anyone listening is struggling to find meaning or trying to make sense of their own experiences, I really recommend checking it out. It's powerful. It might change your life. And as we wrap up this chapter of Books on the Mic, remember, you're not alone.
We're all in this together, searching for meaning, for connection, for a life that's worth living. So until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep talking about it.